The sky doesn't lie the way the ocean does. When something vanishes into the sea, we can imagine it resting somewhere in the dark, 2 miles down, preserved in cold and pressure. But the sky offers no such comfort. When something disappears up there, it falls. Metal crumples, fuel ignites, wreckage scatters across miles of terrain. Search teams find it eventually, twisted aluminum, scorched earth, answers written in debris. But sometimes they don't find anything at all. October 21st, 1978, Southern Australia. A Saturday evening, clear and calm. Frederick Valentich was preparing for a routine training flight across Bass Strait, the stretch of water separating mainland Australia from Tasmania. He was 20 years old, a pilot with about 150 hours of flight time, working toward his commercial license. Not a rookie, but not a veteran either. He knew enough to be confident, not enough to be complacent. The flight was simple on paper. Depart Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne at 6:19 p.m. Fly south to King Island. Pick up passengers. Return. Total distance, about 125 miles each way. The weather looked perfect. Clear skies, good visibility, light winds. King Island's runway was lit and ready. Everything routine, everything safe. Valentich filed his flight plan that afternoon. Single-engine Cessna 182L. Registration Delta Sierra Juliet. He'd be flying VFR, visual flight rules, meaning he'd navigate by sight, using landmarks and instruments. The route would take him over Bass Strait, mostly water, but the crossing wasn't long. 40 minutes, maybe less. People made this flight constantly without incident. He walked out to the aircraft around 6 p.m., did his pre-flight check, tested the controls, checked fuel levels, confirmed the radio worked. Everything nominal. He climbed into the cockpit, buckled in, started the engine. The propeller turned, caught, settled into its familiar drone. At 6:19 p.m., Delta Sierra Juliet lifted off from Moorabbin. Valentich climbed to 4,500 feet, turned south, and headed out over the coast. Below him, the suburbs of Melbourne gave way to farmland, then scrub, then the dark water of Bass Strait. The sun was setting behind him, painting the western sky orange and red. Ahead, twilight was already deepening into night. The flight was uneventful for the first hour. Valentich followed his heading, checked his instruments, maintained altitude. He radioed Melbourne Flight Service at 7:06 p.m., a routine position report, confirming he was on course, on schedule, no issues. Flight Service acknowledged, everything normal. Then, at 7:06 p.m., Valentich called again. Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known traffic below 5,000? Steve Roby, the flight service officer on duty, checked his radar. Delta Sierra Juliet, no known traffic. Valentich paused, then responded. There is aircraft over me at least 1,000 feet above. Roby frowned. His radar showed nothing else in the area. Let me play the actual audio. Due to the poor quality, I'll clarify on the screen.
Delta Sierra Juliet, what type of aircraft is it?
A few seconds passed. Roby waited, then Valentich's voice came back, uncertain now. And this time there was tension in his voice. Melbourne, it's approaching now from due east toward me. Roby tried to stay calm, procedural. Delta Sierra Juliet, open microphone, identified. No response for a few seconds. Then, Delta Sierra Juliet. It seems to be playing some sort of game, flying at a speed I cannot estimate. Roby asked what kind of aircraft it was. Valentich didn't answer directly. It's not an aircraft. Those 4 words hung in the air. Roby pressed him. Delta Sierra Juliet, can you describe the aircraft? Valentich responded slowly, like he was trying to make sense of what he was seeing. As it's flying past, it's a long shape. Cannot identify more than that. It has such speed. Before me right now. Melbourne. Delta Sierra Juliet, Roger. And how large would the object be? There was a pause. Longer this time. When Valentich spoke again, his voice had changed. The uncertainty was hardening into something else. Confusion. Maybe fear. Melbourne. It seems like it's stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me also. It has a green light and sort of metallic-like. It's all shiny on the outside. Roby was trying to follow, trying to visualize what Valentich was describing. Delta Sierra Juliet, Roger. Another pause. Then Valentich's voice, more urgent now. Delta Sierra Juliet. It's vanished. Delta Sierra Juliet. Confirm. It has vanished. Say again.
Confirm your aircraft just vanished. Delta Sierra Juliet, is the aircraft still with you?
Delta Sierra Juliet. Is the aircraft still with you? Delta Sierra Juliet. It's approaching from the southwest. Roby waited. The radio crackled with static. The open microphone picking up the ambient noise of Valentich's cockpit. Engine hum. Wind noise. The pilot's breathing. Then Valentich's voice cut through, strained, almost disbelieving. Ah, the engine is rough idling. I've got it set at 2324, and the thing is coughing. Roby responded immediately. Delta Sierra Juliet, Roger. What are your intentions? My intentions are to go to King Island. Melbourne. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. Static. It is hovering and it's not an aircraft.
What are your intentions?
Those were the last clear words Frederick Valentich spoke. For the next 17 seconds, the microphone remained open. There was a strange noise, metallic, scraping, like something dragging across metal or interference from an unknown source. Audio analysts would study those 17 seconds for years afterward, trying to identify the sound, trying to understand what happened in that final moment. Then nothing. Silence. The transmission ended at 7:12 p.m. Steve Roby tried calling back immediately. Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne. No response. He tried again and again. The radio stayed dead. At 7:12 p.m., Frederick Valentich and his aircraft vanished. The alarm went out within minutes. Melbourne Flight Service notified the Air Force, the Coast Guard, search and rescue. By nightfall, boats and aircraft were being mobilized, but darkness made searching nearly impossible. They'd have to wait until morning. At first light, on Sunday, October 22nd, the search began in earnest. Aircraft crisscrossed Bass Strait, flying low, scanning the water for wreckage, oil slicks, debris, anything. Boats searched the coastline and nearby islands. The Australian Navy joined in, deploying ships with sonar equipment. They searched for days, expanding the radius, covering hundreds of square miles. They found nothing. No wreckage, no oil slick, No life raft, no body. The Cessna 182L Delta Sierra Juliet had simply ceased to exist. The investigation started immediately. The Department of Transport formed a committee to analyze the disappearance, reviewing every detail of the flight, the aircraft's maintenance records, Valentich's experience and training, the weather conditions, the radio transcript. They interviewed his family, his flight instructors, other pilots. They tried to build a picture of what happened in those final 6 minutes. Frederick Valentich had been interested in UFOs. His friends and family confirmed it. He'd read books about abductions and sightings, watched documentaries, talked about the possibility of extraterrestrial visitation. Just days before his disappearance, he'd watched a TV program about UFO sightings in Australia. Some people thought this was significant. Others thought it was irrelevant. Plenty of people are interested in UFOs without vanishing. The official theory focused on disorientation. Investigators suggested that Valentich had become confused in the twilight conditions over Bass Strait, possibly mistaking his own aircraft's lights reflecting off the water for another craft. Some theorized the object could have been Venus, which may have been visible on the horizon that evening, combined with his own navigation lights reflecting in his windscreen. The orbiting sensation could have been spatial disorientation, a well-documented phenomenon where pilots lose track of their aircraft's orientation relative to the horizon. In this scenario, Valentich became increasingly confused, fixated on what he believed was another aircraft, allowed his own plane to descend without realizing it. The rough engine idling he reported could have been him inadvertently reducing throttle, or the engine sputtering as the aircraft entered an unusual attitude. Eventually, he crashed into Bass Strait, the aircraft sinking quickly in deep water, wreckage scattering, never to be recovered. It was logical, evidence-based, consistent with known aviation accidents, but it had problems. Frederick Valentich had 150 hours of flight time. He'd flown at night before, flown over water before. Spatial disorientation usually affects inexperienced pilots in instrument conditions. Clouds, darkness, no visual references. But Valentich was flying VFR in clear weather, with the horizon visible, with instruments functioning normally. Could he have become that disoriented that quickly in those conditions? And the description he gave: long shape, green light, metallic-like, hovering, didn't sound like someone describing Venus or reflected light. He said it was moving, approaching from different directions, flying at high speed, then stationary. That's not a star. That's not a reflection. Then there was the problem of the wreckage. Bass Strait is deep in places, but not impossibly so. Aircraft crashes leave debris fields. Fuel creates slicks, seat cushions, luggage, pieces of the fuselage. Something floats. Something washes ashore eventually. Search teams covered the area thoroughly, using the best equipment available. They found nothing, not a single fragment. Some investigators proposed a different explanation. Valentich had staged his own disappearance. His interest in UFOs provided the setup. He flew low over the water, making the dramatic radio calls, then turned off his transponder and diverted to a remote airstrip, possibly in Tasmania or a small island. He landed, abandoned the aircraft, started a new life elsewhere. The motivation? Financial troubles, personal issues, the desire to escape. It's been done before. Pilots have faked crashes to avoid debts, legal problems, failed relationships. And Valentich's radio transmissions, calm at first, then building in urgency, could have been a performance, carefully scripted. But staging a disappearance this elaborate requires planning, resources, and accomplices. Valentich would have needed somewhere to hide the aircraft. a way to disappear afterward, money to survive on. Investigators found no evidence of any of this. His bank account showed no unusual activity before the flight. He hadn't sold possessions or settled debts. His family and friends insisted he had no reason to run. Another theory emerged over the years, darker and simpler: suicide. Valentich deliberately flew his plane into Bass Strait, using the UFO story as a cover, a final piece of theatre before the end. The calm in his early transmissions, the build-in tension, the abrupt cutoff, all consistent with someone working up the courage to follow through. But there were problems with this too. People who knew Valentich described him as enthusiastic about flying, looking forward to his commercial license, planning his future. He'd just bought new flying equipment. He'd scheduled more lessons. Suicide victims usually leave signs: withdrawal, depression, goodbyes. Valentich showed none of that. And then there were the sightings. In the hours before and after Valentich's disappearance, other people reported seeing strange lights over Bass Strait. A pilot flying near Cape Otway, not far from Valentich's last known position, reported an unusual green light moving erratically in the sky around the same time. Ground witnesses on King Island saw lights they couldn't explain. None of these reports were confirmed. None were investigated thoroughly at the time, but they existed, documented in local newspapers, mentioned in witness statements. The Australian government concluded its investigation in 1982. The official finding: the reason for the disappearance of the aircraft has not been determined. No crash site located. No cause of death established. No definitive explanation. Frederick Valentich was declared missing, presumed dead. The case should have faded into obscurity after that. Another unsolved aviation mystery. Another name added to the list of pilots lost over water. But it didn't. The UFO angle kept it alive. The recording of Valentich's last transmission was released to the public, played on radio programs, analysed by researchers, dissected by enthusiasts. Those 17 seconds of metallic noise at the end became some of the most studied audio in UFO history. Over the years, theories multiplied. Some claimed Valentich had been abducted by extraterrestrials, taken aboard a craft, never returned. Others suggested he'd encountered a secret military aircraft, possibly experimental, possibly foreign, and had been shot down to protect classified information. There were claims of government cover-ups, suppressed evidence, witnesses threatened into silence. In 1983, an engine cowl flap washed ashore on Flinders Island, about 20 miles from Valentich's flight path. The serial number matched the type of Cessna he'd been flying, though it couldn't be definitively linked to his specific aircraft. Investigators examined it but couldn't determine how long it had been in the water or whether it came from Delta Sierra Juliet. It was the only piece of potential wreckage ever found. More than 45 years have passed. Frederick Valentich would be in his mid-60s now if he'd survived somehow, living under a different name in a different country. But the evidence suggests he didn't survive. Something happened over Bass Strait on that October evening. His aircraft went down. He went with it. The question that remains isn't whether he died. It's what he saw before he did. The official explanation: disorientation, pilot error, tragic accident, fits most of the facts. It's clean, rational, consistent with aviation safety statistics. But it doesn't account for everything. It doesn't explain the precision in his descriptions, the calm in his voice until the very end, the absolute absence of wreckage. It doesn't explain the other sightings that night, the green light multiple witnesses reported, the strange coincidence of timing. The UFO explanation is dramatic, compelling, impossible to disprove. Valentich saw something something that behaved in ways conventional aircraft don't, something that hovered and moved at speeds he couldn't estimate, something that wasn't there according to radar, but was there according to his eyes. In his final moments, whatever it was came closer, interfered with his engine, and then, what? Took him, caused him to crash. We don't know because the transmission ended. The stage disappearance theory requires the most elaborate deception, the most planning, the most luck. It's possible in the abstract, but implausible in the specific. Too many things would have had to go right. Too many people would have had to stay silent for too many years. And suicide, the darkest possibility, leaves us with a young pilot choosing the most theatrical exit imaginable, describing non-existent objects to air traffic control as he descended toward the water. It's psychologically complex, difficult to accept without more evidence. We're left with fragments, a 6-minute radio transmission, a missing aircraft, a pilot who flew into the twilight sky and never came back, the recording of his voice, preserved forever, describing something that was not an aircraft, something with a green light and a metallic surface that hovered until his engine started coughing and the microphone went dead. The sky doesn't keep secrets well. It's too open, too observed, too mapped. When things fall from it, we find them, but not this time. Those 17 seconds of metallic sound remain, unidentified, unexplained, the last thing the radio captured before Frederick Valentich disappeared. Delta Sierra Juliet never landed. Frederick Valentich never returned. The sky doesn't lie, but it doesn't always tell the truth either. It just exists, indifferent, vast, holding whatever happened in that darkening twilight, keeping it to itself. We listen to the recording over and over, trying to hear something that will make it all make sense, knowing we never will.